Alright, here we are with age 97, final changes. I'm Smiles, and this is the rant. So, what we're looking at, like a standard age length, and X changes. Right. I'm gonna go at this as if I'm thinking about age 96. No point really thinking about proposed or revised anymore. I'll just be comparing things age to age, see what's stronger, see what's weaker, see what's changed. We've got converts back on trads. That's going to mean basically everyone gets 4 free EPA. They just won't have to train, and they'll keep that war after war from the very start of the age. So that's already a big economic boost. In your very first end of war ceasefire, you're going to be training 2 less EPA, say, and from there on, maybe 4 less each time. Then combined with other changes to the economy, we're going to be back in the era of a lot of people having more or less maximum EPA on their attackers. Primarily, that's an attacker buff. It also will indirectly help out Fairy and Dark Elf quite a bit for getting their elites. But it does change the other ways that they can or can't attack. Wages penalty from the wall. That's nice for some micro kingdoms, I guess. Daily activity bonus calculated from average income the last in-game month. This mostly means if you get waived or dragon sent on the 24th or rioted, it won't affect your bonus too much. I don't think it matters all that much, but it's a nice little change, I guess. Dragons affecting protection provinces, pretty minor. Being able to see your own gangbang protection on your province is going to be nice. And hopefully that also shows up in Monk. Hopefully they can do that. So when you look at your kingdom page in Monk, you'll see all your own gangbang protections. I mean, won't change much, but it helps knowing how vulnerable you are, I guess. It looks like they're fixing the out-of-range wars, giving so much score. I think that was pretty important. We saw last age, I think Amariti got about 25 war win points for winning out of range. Something about the same for Merciless last age. 2 ages ago, we got like 40 points out of range winning against Suia, so it was causing really big swings that don't really seem necessary. And aggressive force ceasefire will no longer transfer war score. I didn't actually have any of those last age. I waived a lot, so I don't know if that actually mattered. But there you go. Farms are down from 70 to 60 bushels a tick. It's about a 15% nerf. You're going to be running 15% more farms. For most people, that means you're going from 6% to 7% most of the age. Not a big deal there. Might make it a little awkward for the dragon funding, which we'll see later. Training grounds give you reduced mercenary costs. A nice change, but I don't think it's necessary. Even with minus 75% merc costs on warrior cast, I don't end up using that many mercs. Usually you have enough dungeons, and it's just easy to forget, and it's a little bit annoying to micro adding mercs to every attack. Who even has money anyways? But I think for warriors, especially, this is going to be a really big bonus, because you're going to have, like, mercenaries that barely cost anything, so every attack's going to have max mercs. Max mercs give you... what? Every 5 units, you get 8 offense. So it's sort of like a 10% offense buff or so, if you can reliably use it. Maybe if you want to run an elf warrior with no access to dungeons, then you can use mercs all the time because you have no prisoners. That could actually be kind of viable. Maybe you want a really odd pick, you could go with something like elf warrior and take advantage of that. And when we've got universities, now buffing all science by 1% instead of one category by 2%. I think that's a good change. I think the big single category psi dumping was a little bit abusable. It was just benefiting some people's playstyles a lot more than others. And I think this is necessary because now that we have personalities granting a 25% science bonus to one category, it'll stop like massively pushing one category. But I think generally you still want to massively push the category you're getting bonus books in. But it means people that split up their science a bit more aren't being penalized for it. You can take advantage of diminishing returns better by getting science into everything. Cunning science got split into 2 and nerfed, I believe. So I believe that this is, so it's scaling like 2/3. Yeah. I don't know. Doesn't seem that great for investing. Let's see what the wiki said. E. There we go. So you're cutting Cunning into 2. So you need like a lot of books. Twice as many books into Cunning, and then nerfed. On top of that, you're getting the scaling's reduced by 2/3. You need like 50% more books. Maybe more than that. Maybe you need like double the books to get the same effect. Cunning just got kicked into the ground. You're mostly going to be pushing the one thing you're supposed to be good at. If you're casting fireballs, you're getting a lot of sorcery. If you're casting Night Strike, you're getting a lot of that. But I think it's just going to be one of those more put some books there for the value, but you don't push it anymore. I think that's a little bit unnecessary. I think this is an over nerf, but I guess we'll see how it plays out. They fixed raise bouncing into war, and otherwise the high amount of kills you got hitting into war. They've got war score tiers fixed up a bit. I think this is nice. Last age was like 20 kingdoms were in the max tier. Now you're looking at like maybe 6 or 8 kingdoms in the max tier near end of age. I think that's a good change. If you compare to before, I think bottom. So quite a big difference. And I think that's smart. I'm not a huge fan of the war tier system to begin with, but I like to see that there's less bonuses going to it. Rituals got slightly buffed. Now Full Kingdom will only need to cast 75 times instead of 80, and that scales up with, now it's like 5-6% easier to cast a ritual. Also means that 22-man kingdoms are only going to need to cast 66. So they're casting almost a third of the rituals, a third less ritual than last age. So I think that's a pretty big bonus. Going to help lower province kingdoms fight a bit more. Not a huge fan of this change, but it'll be nice for the people it's nice for. I think for the most part, rituals are pretty easy and they don't need to be easier. And we have new rituals. First change is affluent. Go look at our affluent ritual last age. Last age, we had 20% birth rate and 20% income. This age, you're losing the birth rate. So if anyone was using an affluent last age to sort of pump new land out of war, or even in war as like a pseudo benediction, that's less allowed now. You lose 5% on the income. It's not a huge deal. 120% money versus 115%. It's not going to break the bank too much. But now we have 20% draft rate back. That's going to give people about 12 more ticks, I'd say, of max income. And that's a huge change. I think people are going to end up with 20-25% more gold in End of War Ceasefire, which means 20-25% more elites per End of War Ceasefire. So I was mostly seeing Kingdom's Last Age that were at larger land size. So anyone who is warring and not growing too much can maybe tell me better numbers, but I was seeing a lot of people at like that 6 EPA range last age at a high end. And then TMs were managing 10 plus EPA if they weren't growing, and then again, if they were growing a lot, it was like 1-to-1 D-specs and elites. So I think with that change, we'll see a lot more elites all the way around. I think getting 10 plus EPA on everyone's going to be pretty standard again. And then Expedient, we got Expedient. 20% train time removed. You're going to be able to train 5 ticks later, which also means you can draft 5 ticks later. So you're looking at 5 ticks more income from late draft on top of 12 less ticks of draft needed. So before we were looking at, 24 to 36 hours of max income. Now we're looking at that 48 hours of max income again, which we used to see. So I think that's good for everyone that likes training stuff. A lot more elites this age. Generally, elites favor core. TMs are usually having a better time at saving their elites and then getting more elites each End of War Ceasefire, whereas core pretty much always reset to a low elite count every single war. And that didn't mean that Fairy could go from 0 to 12 EPA. It meant that, Fairy went to 6 EPA, and the End of War they still had 6 EPA, whereas like core would be at 10 EPA, and End of War they're at like 4 EPA. That's the sort of mostly helps core out, I think. And then any TM that's based on D-specs, they don't really get any help from this. So your elves and your halflings aren't going to have the same sort of advantage seeing last stage. Barrier. Barrier's just getting a straight buff. This is 10% combat losses. That is not unit. That is like land. This is like having free guard stations or free mist. I think you could see this being pretty scary. You're just running into a big wall of high defense provinces. Stacks with your guard station makes you more resistant. I think barrier could actually be unironically used more this age. Just a pretty good buff. This is like giving everyone 8% more guard stations in the whole kingdom, which is a pretty good bonus, I think. Say you're running a bunch of clerics by defense, you've got minus troop losses, you've got illuminate shadows and divine shield already cast. Now you're looking at taking almost half damage from be really hard to chain you. Got dwarves for mist and DS and build. I can see this being really annoying, but I don't know if it still matches up with just having defense and sustain on the military or having offense and kills. But I think someone's going to try and use it and they won't hate it. Obedient, we went over. Pro is removed and replaced basically with Godspeed. 10% attack time. Not a huge bonus on itself. I only like 10% attack speed if you have other forms of attack speed. So this is a ritual I would only want to use if I'm already building barracks, or I'm running tacticians or avians. Because base time versus 90% time, I feel that actually often favors based attack times. You want to be stacking other things to get even faster. Credit gains in combat. I don't think that matters too much for spec credits. That's mostly going to help you in war with building credits. And nothing wrong with that. Honor gained in combat. See, this is the sort of thing I don't like in a ritual. Because when you're just looking at honor gains, what you get here is basically a ritual that's only used for farming much weaker opponents, or for hit and run tactics, where you're just waving, you max gaining, +4 withdraw and max gain honor, and you leave with free honor, and you get to sort of abuse the system that way. Now, I don't mind that tactical withdraw sort of play. I think that's something the game needs and is fine to use, but I don't like the idea that you have a ritual that's basically mostly going to be used to get really high honor stealing from just weaker opponents. That, you know, you war hard people all age, you fight for every bit of honor, and then somebody gets a nice farm win at the end of age, and they farmed like 40% of their honor in a single war. Yeah, I saw it happen in age, 89? TBB was warring some ghetto. The ghetto basically stopped playing halfway through the war. It was near end of age. They're like, well, we got screwed. We had some people not show up for a wave, and now everyone's dead. And they just gave up in the war. So TBB was running Avians with barracks and an expropriation ritual. They farmed like 35k honor in a single war. And they went from like rank 12 to rank 1 on. And when you have something like that in the game, I think it just sort of a lot of people. Havoc. So this Havoc here in age 96, this is a typo. There's actually 30% effect on Havoc last age, and they just didn't tell anyone. And they just said, well, it was in-game 30%, but like, yeah, I'm looking at the changes here, and you didn't even update it. So Havoc actually got nerfed this age down to 20%. And compensated with some extra damage. I think overall that's still a nerf. I think I'd prefer the 30%. But a little damage makes up for it. So it's not a huge nerf, but it is something. Now we have kill stacking Onslaught. Onslaught was giving minus military wages, which is a very good bonus, don't get me wrong. Very, very strong bonus. But when you have kill stacking available to the game, which we see this age, we have Warrior, and we have Bloodlust. Now this Onslaught. Last age, you didn't have Bloodlust, didn't have a personality granting bonus kills. Anyway. Yeah, didn't have that last age. So now you're looking at having this 15% kills stacking on top of other sources of kills, stacking with higher offenses because of higher elites. So that's the sort of Onslaught I think is much stronger. When you don't have quite as strong of a core age, I might actually take the wages. So, very scary Onslaught. And Stalwart. Stalwart's effectively the same. It got just the tiniest bit of a nerf, I believe. Casualties going from 20% to 15%. I think that's fair. I think Stalwart was the best ritual last age, and mostly because we had weaker core. I think now that it got nerfed and you have stronger core, this maybe actually is not a needed nerf, but it is what it is. Stalwart's your best pick for Unbreakables. That's mainly what you're going for, is you want your Stalwart to try and secure your TMs as early as possible. Your very standard setup's going to be you send a Ruby Dragon and you use Stalwart at the start of war. That effectively swings defense to offense ratios by 20%. And then hopefully that gets your TMs unbreakable after a day or so. Will it work? I don't know. I think people just hitting you with Onslaught is going to be good enough. Got a new spell, Miner's Mystique. Basically, this is giving dwarves 10% more gold. Not exactly, I don't think. It doesn't add gold to banks. But more or less, dwarves get 10% more income. Just when you read Dwarf, look at it and read 10% more income. New spell, Salvation. This is a human-only spell. It's also a support spell, reducing all military casualties by 10%. This is a very modest bonus. I would put this on par with something like Greater Protection. Good spell, get me wrong, but it's not blowing anyone out of the water. It's like a Greater Protection or maybe a Fanat. It's not as punchy as like Reflect Magic or Clear Sight or Bloodlust, but it's really modest. I think it's something you can use all the time. You've got human clerics, you're never going to have mana, because 12 people a day are going to be like, hey, can you cast this on me? Hey, can you cast this on me? So, a nice little bonus. Minus casualty buffs don't stack amazingly well, so having an extra 10% thrown into something is not as effective as when you like stack offenses, because those things multiply positively. But minus casualties at the same. Easier Abolish Ritual. I don't know why that's in the game either. I think just because rituals are cheaper, so is AR. I think both Abolish Ritual and rituals in general are pretty easy. So I don't really know why we're making runes so easy. With the change a few ages ago, changing the scaling of runes, like there's just so much rune around from a very early point of age now. Amnesia is now Heretic only, and we're going to see a lot more books this age on core. So having heretics that can Amnesia some strong core this age is going to be really valuable near the end of age. I think it's going to be cast less on like rogues. It used to be pretty popular on, but I don't think you'll see that quite as much. I think it's a good spell. I think having it on Heretic is fine. I think it being available to Mystics is a bit too strong, just because you have so much WPA and mana as a Mystic. You know, even if you're not a Nightmare-based kingdom, I might consider having a Heretic or two, just so you can cast Amnesia, especially on late age. Sages are going to be quite strong, I think. Bloodlust. This is a buff to Bloodlust. It used to be you lost 20% and the enemy lost 10% more. And that was balanced because Bloodlust gave you 10% offense and you did 10% more kills, which turns out the enemy is losing like 121% units, and you are losing 20% units. So this is actually a big buff to Bloodlust and thus to Orcs. Now when you attack with Bloodlust, you're doing, 26% more kills and you're only taking 15% more losses. That's a big swing in favor of Bloodlust. If you go a kill stacking Orc, you're going to be very happy this age. And I'll get into that when I get into the races. Chastity effect changed to 50%. I don't particularly understand this change. I always was saying Chastity was one of the best spells in the game, but cutting it in half seems like a bit much. Only saving grace is that this is attached to Dark Elf only. Dark Elf have a 25% spell duration increase. You're going to be getting like 6 and 7 tick Chastities. So it's, it's better than Fireballing by quite a bit, but how much better? It's hard to say. I feel like Chastity's only going to be like twice as mana efficient as Fireball, and you can only cast one of them at a time, so it's like, who cares? When it was 4 times as mana efficient, yeah, pretty sweet. I don't know. It's a thing. Not my favorite. Divine Shield got slightly nerfed. I don't really know why. Seems sort of random, especially with the ET change. Speaking of the ET change, I believe the duration is the same as Chastity. So max duration of 5. It's going to be G ranging 2 to 5 based on net worth and guilds. And then this is a buff to Dark Elf as well, because you're going to be looking at those 6 and 7 tick exposed thieves. Very weird change. This is going to be probably the change that affects the meta the most. At the start of war, everyone's going to have max mana no matter what. So that's a big buff to TMs, especially TMs that have button, or when there's sort of a mutual standoff and both sides are waiting for button. So now you're guaranteed getting to use all your stealth at the start of a war, and you're also guaranteed to be allowed to bank stealth. So if you're a rogue, you can sit for 12 hours, store up 50 stealth, even well ET'd, and they have no way of mitigating it. Like, they can say, okay, he hasn't done a run in 12 ticks, we know something's happening, let's ET all the rogues. That used to be the old standard, now you can't do that anymore. But it's guaranteed damage, and it's not using a lot of mana. So you might used to do 3 ETs every 3 ticks, 1 ET a tick. They were only averaging maybe 1 stealth damage each. Except for when you caught them and you knew they were banking up stealth, and then maybe you're looking at 5 stealth damage for a couple hits. Now you've got guaranteed stealth damage for very little mana, and that's going to cost you 5 stealth every ET cast, costing you 25% of your stealth damage guaranteed in war. That's pretty rough. Now, the thing is that it's actually less effective against rogues than, say, heretics. If you get ET on a heretic, they're losing 1/3 of their stealth, not 1/4. And the heretic's stealth is doing 15% more damage. So it's a big thing there. Doing 1 op a tick versus 1.5 ops a tick. Pretty big swing. So we'll see how that goes. It means giving the button is a lot more reasonable. Especially with this Sabotage Wizard change. I don't really agree with the Sabotage Wizard change either. I think that's too much of a buff. Or nerf, rather. Fanat change by 25%. Shorter duration anyways. Yeah, it's a bit of quality of life for people casting Fanat. Rather, Invis down to a 10% bonus. That's a pretty significant nerf. Now, Invis is on Fairy only. So, Fairy have 10% more TPA instead of 20% more TPA. This will end up being, I mean, most of the time you have, say, 5 TPA if you're Fairy, because you're some sort of TM. So it used to be +1 raw TPA, now it's +0.5. So you can sort of just convert that into a population bonus. Meteor showers is changed to war only. Don't understand this change either. I think it would have been okay at hostile only. I mean, it's pretty annoying when you give unfriendly to get MS on everyone. I think in hostile, though, you need to deal damage. So this is going to change hostile play a little bit. Whether it's worth it or not, I don't know. So it slightly decreases the value of mystics. Mostly it just changes how hostile play is going to work out. Support list. Everything's the same, except there's no HI in the game. Or rather, no castable HI support. And I don't even know if you could cast HI last stage. Come to think of it, on War Hero. Yeah, so you couldn't even cast HI last stage on people. I ran a War Hero core. Wait a minute, that's not right. Definitely casting Hero's Inspiration on people. Oh, because it was access to all support spells. I was trying to. Okay, that's why. So no HI this age. That's a nerf to just everyone. That's just a nerf to wartime economy. Uh, so everyone's just going to be paying 10% more wages in war. At least anyone you might have cast HI on, which is a lot of TMs and high wage attackers. But also it's less mana that your cleric's going to have to use. And then we get into these. Fanaticism is a Avian only support spell. If you go Avian Cleric, you can get everyone 5% offense. But Mist, Dwarf only support spell. Really big bonus. I recommend anyone warring have a Dwarf Cleric and just toss it on anyone who gets chained. Salvation. I think it's a little less valuable than Mist. I think Human Cleric's just a good pick anyways. Having one of these to toss onto your other core is going to be nice. I don't think it's quite as impactful as Mist when it comes to like chains, but I think the fact that you can always use it and always get value for it makes it quite valuable. And then Town Watch. This got moved to Elf, and I think that's very strong. I think Elf Cleric's one of the best clerics you can play already, and now them having Town Watch for chains in a very core-centric age, an age where I think people are going to have a lot more peasants because there's weaker TMs and there's no chastity. I think people are going to have more peasants, they're going to overpop more, and being able to throw Town Watch onto them is very strong. I'd say an Elf Cleric is a must-have in stage. I think a Dwarf Cleric's pretty much a must-have as well. I think an Avian and a Human Cleric, nice to have, but not necessary. But I think essentially everyone wants one Dwarf and one Elf Cleric, no matter what. Sabotage Wizards seems like a really big nerf. Um, Sabotage Wizards was already, I mean, it was good. Main issue of Sabotage Wizards is when you had a lot of damage buffs to your spells or your thievery, and when people sort of had a modest amount of watchtowers. Sabotage Wizards is never really that effective through high watchtowers. And some meter changes. I think that made all of these higher meter cost. You don't move meter that much with ops anyways, and since you're not getting ET'd, you don't really need to do hostile ops as much if you can wait for war. I don't think it's very impactful. This is another weird change we're going to see. Dragons being reduced to 2 days instead of 5 days. And the food thing, I don't think the food thing matters at all. You hardly have to care. But the point is that you need some food to send dragons, and it won't be that much of a deal. I'm sure someone's going to try and use a food denial strat to stop dragons. I think that's just a bit silly. But it's possible. You could do it. It's only going to really work in war. Because out of war, people will just be able to steal food if they need to. This is nice quality of life. Now, a 2-day dragon, you still don't want to tank a 2-day dragon very often. But now you can run a much more reliable cost benefit. Like 5 days, that's almost always the full length of war. So, tanking a 5-day dragon when it also had more damaging building raises and it cost you income. Almost impossible to tank a dragon and expect to win, with a couple of small exceptions. It was almost always, though, just correct to slay any dragon pretty much as quick as you could. Now, I think you can make decisions not to slay dragons quite a bit more reasonably. you know, a ruby might take you 7 to 8% of your military to kill, and it has a 10% military efficiency, so you would always slay it in the past. Now, you can maybe tank it, and then in 2 days, your military's 7% better. Still a little bit rough. I still don't think you're going to want to tank too many ruby dragons. I don't think you're going to want to tank too many sapphire dragons. I don't think you're going to want to tank too many topaz dragons. I think you might be able to tank emeralds, though. I think tanking an emerald is going to be pretty viable. Especially if you think they're going to send another dragon. That was really the only time you used to tank dragons, if you knew another one was right behind it. Same sort of thing's true, but anyways, I have to see how this works. I think you're still usually slaying dragons. So, yeah. And otherwise, I'd say all the dragons are stronger, except Topaz is kind of weaker than it used to be. All dragons used to have this income, whereas all these things I think are scarier than 10% income. Oh well. I recommend sending ruby dragons and sapphire dragons. Actually, I recommend just sending only sapphire dragons always. They're cheaper. You can do a lot more with them instantly. Good stuff. Oh, that was a good 35 minutes on just mechanic changes. Now we can get into the meat and potatoes. So I'm going to actively compare to the age before when it comes to races. So this age, Avians are nerfed on specs by 1 in each direction. They have the same elite. More expensive, but I think you're still going to be able to train more of them by quite a bit due to other mechanic changes. So Avian lost 10% defense, 5% attack time, and 20% birth rate. So feels like a fair nerf over last age's Avian. But again, I think you're going to have a lot more elites this age, and that's going to make you a lot stronger overall. You also have converts, and exceptionally good converts for Avian. Means early age, you're going to be able to throw in a lot of elites. I think that's very strong. And now they have built-in fanaticism. Not a huge buff, but it's not bad. So, Avian, I think, feels pretty strong. I don't like losing that birth rate. I don't like losing that 10% defense, but if you have a lot of elites, I think Avian's probably the strongest core, give or take. But overall, weaker than last age, I'd say. Slightly. Still strong. Dark Elf. Dark Elf is losing TPA, losing spell damage, gaining spell duration. I think this actually makes Dark Elf a better mystic, and especially with having Chastity, I don't really see why you'd want a Dark Elf Heretic. I think even the spell rune cost isn't enough for making Nightmares that viable. I think if you just have elves in your kingdom making runes, you might prefer Fairy Heretic or Elf or Halfling Heretic over Dark Elf. But I think Dark Elf is a really strong mystic now. Yeah, losing that TPA also makes your heretics a little less attractive. They have +1 O spec now, which is stronger O spec. They used to have an offensive elite. So you're losing offense, you're gaining defense, and you're also losing the ability to maintain offense. You're not going to be a pure attacker as a Dark Elf this age. Even if you want to be, you're just going to lose the offense too fast. But you can still play a pretty solid hybrid. My main issue with the Dark Elf hybrid is they don't do very well in long wars due to birth rate. But You hit a couple times, you gain defense, you can get sort of pseudo unbreakable, and I think that's pretty strong. So I think Dark Elf's a very strong pure mystic and a very strong hybrid mystic, and a potentially useful cleric due to the duration. So that's where I'd put Dark Elf. I think it's just a mystic. I don't know if there's anything else you want to do with Dark Elf this age, but I think it does the mystic thing really well. Dwarf. Dwarfs are basically identical. You actually are saving raise costs now. That's pretty nice for Dwarf. That's a fairly decent bonus. And they're saving some food. It's a couple build percentages. Doesn't matter that much. They're losing 15% TPA. That means a 3 TPA attacking Dwarf is kind of like a 2.5 TPA attacking Dwarf. Not a huge deal, but it's going to make hybrids better at night striking you if they can get past your watchtowers. They've got the exact same elite, exact same specs. But again, they're going to be able to train a lot more elites this age than last age. So they're going to be gaining more benefit from that elite. And when they have their armies home, they're going to be really hard to hit. But they're going to take some losses. They gain that income. They still have missed. So Dwarf struggles a bit as a pure core, just because it doesn't quite have the raw offense you want a lot of the time. But I think it's like it doesn't hit TMs very reliably as a non-warrior. But if you're in a situation where you have your dwarves set up and they can break TMs, I think Dwarf's super strong. Because there's a building efficiency bonus, they can really tailor their builds for the enemy really effectively. If they have a lot of thief power, you run in a lot of watchtowers. If you are scared about being chained or you're scared about kill stacking, you can play against that. The Dwarf's very strong in smart leadership hands and smart province hands, as they can make those adjustments. And they do have strong enough offense. Now, in a core versus core fight, Dwarf usually does pretty well because they can stack those guard stations. It's just really hard to overpop them. Thing is, they don't have that oomph. They don't have speed, they don't have extra canes or kills. So they don't chain especially deep. They're usually pretty net worth heavy as well with their elite. So that makes them harder to deep chain people with as well. Also means if you're chaining a dwarf with his armies out, you can chain them pretty deep because so much of that net worth is tied to their armies out. But everything's the same as last age. Minus TPA means they won't be able to run as good of a cow or hybrid or TM style if you wanted. So, I don't know. I think Dwarf's fine. Very similar to Dwarf last age, which not a lot of people picked anyways, so I don't think it'll change much either. I think having a Dwarf Cleric for Mist is going to be the best use of Dwarf. I don't plan to pick any Dwarves, I don't think. I might. If I was going to pick a Dwarf, it might be like a Dwarf Sage, but even then with that TPA nerf, it's kind of annoying. So, oh well. Elf is changed a lot. Basically, Elf gained a D-spec defense, which is a lot of defense. That's like 10% more defense for them. They already had a lot of defense. So if you want a TM that just most assuredly gets unbreakable, there you go. But they don't have any TM bonuses, really. They save on wages, which is just a nice general economic bonus. They've got some free building efficiency with ghost workers. They make a shitload of runes. So Elf is more of a weird sort of tank. Like an Elf is very similar to a Dwarf, but you rely a bit more on defense rather than on guard stations. I think a Elf Warrior is a funny pick because you can bypass this dungeon penalty. But it's not really recognizable to last stage's elf. It's much more like just a pure attacking race now, but it's one that seeks to limit the hits on it. So elf is going to be super strong against like tactician cores that want to use their generals. Uh, but problem with elf is they don't gain a lot of build space. Like don't have any free build efficiency, don't have free attack speed, don't have any free hospitals, so they sort of need to have every kind of building. They're going to be stuck sort of in rainbow builds or either otherwise skipping some buildings entirely. But you can do a lot with a 12D spec, and if you run higher D specs and lower elites, you can save a bit of gold and pump time in your end of war ceasefire. You can add more science and wizards to your build. But yeah, as a TM, elf is in the gutter, more or less. I think it can play a decent. It can play a fine TM in that an unbreakable TM's better than any TM that isn't unbreakable, regardless of their power. So, it might still be fine, but it's not exactly what you want. I don't know. I think Elf is in a weird spot. I really like Elf Cleric. You guaranteed want one for Town Watch. I think you can just run them sort of as like a Sage or Cleric as like a high land tank that's got a good economy. And it's just holding a good non-TM high land and net worth spot in your kingdom. But I don't know if you're running them as proper core. I don't think I want an elf tactician or an elf war hero. I think I could live with an elf warrior. Then you're sort of accounting for that offense problem, but you're also tankier than other people. So I think an elf warrior could win a lot of core fights and potentially threaten TMs. But, you're kind of slow. And you don't have any hospitals or anything built in. I don't know. Anyways, Elf's a really boring TM, but if you want defense, it works. Go to Fairy. So, Fairy was only minus 5% pop last stage. See, I thought Fairy was minus 10% this age and last stage. I did all of my planning last stage assuming 10% pop. That's kind of funny. Might explain why Fairies did okay. Okay, so Fairy Military got better. They don't have that O-spec nerf. They don't have that. Or now they have a D-spec buff. And their population nerf is half of what I thought it was. So their main penalty is half as bad as I thought. Their elite didn't go up much in price. So you're going to be able to go early age, hybrid, convert, pump elites, and get a lot of elites pretty easy. Got WPA built in, got TPA built in. You for sure want at least one fairy for pitfalls, probably more. Blizzard, Fool's Gold. I think fairy is your main TM pick of the age. Compared to last age, I mean, this science effectiveness got really strong last age. These things are built in. That's like a whole heretic built in. But now they got WPA, which isn't as good as the arc size. So Fairy will get their elites easier, which is a buff. But they got pretty nerfed on their bonuses. Invis kind of helps, but it's not as good as minus 50%. I think Fairy is your best TM, but as a Mystic, I still think I prefer that Dark Elf. But I think Fairy is your ideal Heretic. I think it's a fine Mystic still. Good Rogue. I think you could even run a Fairy Sage if you wanted to. Now, Fairy's got the toolkit. It needs to do that sort of stuff. You can't really run it as a pure core with the converts, but you can run it in that sort of tanky hybrid role where you make a couple good hits early, then you tank up. Certainly don't want a lot of them attacking, but a couple would work. Yeah, Fairy looks pretty solid. Pretty solid indeed. Halfling. Halfling I'll compare to Gnome. That's your closest thing. So you're losing 5% pop, which is a little bit of a nerf. It's not a huge deal. Gaining 25% TPA, which is a buff, but rogues don't get Invis anymore, which used to be a 20% buff. So mostly Gnome rogues were strong last age. And if you compare it to this age, a Halfling rogue has essentially the same TPA, less population. Town Watch wasn't a huge thing when it came to just the rogues. No access to hospitals, not a big deal for TM. 15% more military casualties is scary this age. It's especially scary for the amount of kill stacking potential in the age. This is giving the enemy a free extra buff if they want to hit you. But for the most part, if you want to run just a halfling, train D-specs, and get a lot of wizards and a lot of science, because all you're doing is training D-specs, I think they're almost as good as gnomes were last age. So if you compare the losses that Elf had, Dark Elf had, Fairy had from last age to this age, I think your halfling's sitting pretty. It can also run as a better Mystic and Heretic compared to Gnome's last age, because that TPA kicks in. So, Halfling looks very strong. You just gotta be really careful they're not breaking you or bouncing you. But if they're not breaking you or bouncing you, Halfling looks incredible for any sort of TM. Won't be seeing me run it as an attacker this age. You probably won't see me running 20 Halflings, so... not quite as good as Gnome was, I don't think. And just to make sure that I can't run 20 halflings and attack, they nerfed the O-spec for some reason. Just the effect I have on people, I guess. But yeah, halfling is very similar to a gnome. Everyone knew gnome last age was very broken. So you probably want to pick halflings for any sort of TM. Any TM at least that you're not picking fairy for. Or dark elf. Humans. Last age humans were like a weird science thing. I don't think we saw many humans last age. So, yeah. Humans have an offense bonus. They also have income. Elite's expensive, but you're going to have a lot more money this age, a lot more science, a lot more what have you. They've got Fountain of Knowledge, got Salvations. They've got really good spells. They've got a really strong elite. They've got the most offense in the game outside of orcs, without really any of those orc penalties. The credits, again, that's really strong for your buildings. You can have always all your built land you need. Credits for specs, I don't know if that's going to matter as much this age or not. It really depends how much drafting people can do. Getting a 25% income buff where they used to have 20% wage buff. Like, these humans aren't really comparable to last ages. These things are out of the park better. Can they compare to Avian? Let's see, they've got slightly more offense than Avian. They don't have any built-in build space. They've got the income, so they're not going to be cutting wages. They're going to be able to draft more. They're going to be able to fund more dragons. They're going to pump those elites easier. But, you know, Avians are faster, and they have about the same offense when you factor in the stables and stuff. So, you know, I think in a head-to-head, Avians are coming out on top against human. I think Avians are sort of one-trick ponies. Which is funny, because they can't ride ponies. But yeah, I think humans got a lot more variety. They're a lot better sitting out of war. You can wave easier with humans because you have that income. So when you gain peasants, it's not a bad thing. So yeah, human looks definitely a top attacker. That offense is very high. You just throw max stables, max elites, and TGs on this guy. You're breaking anything you want. You pick pretty much any personality with this as well. I think you can pick warrior and hit really hard. You can go tactician, and I think with tactician you're gonna have enough offense to use the generals, and then you've got your speed. You can go cleric. You can give people salvation. It's gonna be really nice. Avian or a human cleric. It's slow. It doesn't quite have the offense or kills you want, but with the minus losses, you might be able to sort of weather the hits of other races a lot better. A human cleric's can be super strong against undead. They'll probably be pretty good against a lot of your expected onslaught attacking kingdoms. So, well, it doesn't seem quite as strong as Avian. I think it's maybe in a meta sense stronger than Avian because you can tailor it to break TMs, but you can also tailor it to be more sustainable against a heavy onslaught of attackers. The self-spell mana thing doesn't matter that much, I don't think. If you're picking a human sage, it's going to be a lot of mana to keep up Fountain of Knowledge and Rev and stuff, but I don't think that's a big deal. So yeah, human looks strong. Definitely a top attacker. I'd say it's on par with Dwarf. It's on par with Avian. Can't really say one is stronger than the other so far. Orcs. Orcs. 20% gains and Bloodlust with the most offense. They only lose half penalties from Honor compared to Orc last stage. Last stage, they had no gains. Now they have 20% gains. I'd say gains are stronger than kills. Bloodlust buff. They have less offense this age, but with half honor, it's pretty close to the same offense. You're going to be able to train those elites properly this age with the economic changes. It is quite expensive, though. And they did get more expensive, so I think a pure elite orc is going to be probably the strongest core pick. Main issue is when you start looking at lower amounts of elites. They're going to struggle then. They're going to get chained really hard, but they're also going to chain really hard. I think an Orc Tactician is the best anti-core pick of a core. 5 generals and games, you're going to be outgaining people by 50%. 5 hits at 1.2 is 6. 4 hits at 1 is 4. 600% versus 400% gains, that seems pretty good. You're probably going to be running Onslaught, which means you're stacking offense and kills with offense and kills with offense. So draft cost is nice. This is, it's a modest economic savings in End of War Ceasefire, but it's in war where something like this becomes super effective. You can run aggro draft in war really easily and get a lot more peasants or soldiers that way. I think Orc is looking really strong. I think Orc's probably the strongest pick for the meta. I'm not super worried about TMs next stage. So if you run a fast Orc, just outgaining people, I think Orc Tact is the best meta pick I've seen. Last stage I liked Orc because you could stack kills and offense and hit TMs. This age I like Orc because you can stack kills and offense and gens and speed and kill core. So, I think Orc Tact's one of the best picks of the age. I think if you want to go full Orc Warrior and laugh at people, you're going to be crushing it. I think if you're going Orc Cleric to sustain with the Bloodlust, you're looking okay. Orc Shepherd to leverage gains. I think Orc's really good. You're going to struggle with Science, you're going to struggle with WPA, because everything in End of War Ceasefire is going to be going into pushing those elites. You're not going to want to do learns because you're going to lose a lot of elites doing learns. So your main problem with Orc comes from, getting ahead in those ways. But I think if you're just looking at two people preparing for war and then hitting each other at max power at war, I think Orc's good. And then there's my favorite pick is Undead. Compare Undead to the last age and this age. Got Plague. Everyone loves Plague. No food. That's saving you 5-6% farms over last age. Prisoner converts. So sometimes that's not very good. Sometimes it's really good. I think right now it's really good. I think when you have pretty good offense and you have no psi penalty and you've got kill stacking going on, I think Undead Warrior running 5% dungeons and hitting people's super strong. I think Undead Tactician plaguing people and just chaining them is super strong. I mean, my main issue with Undead might be your ability to hit TMs, because you're a little bit lower on offense. And my other issue would be running into Tacticians that can just outchain you because of your D-spec. But, a 9 D-spec's not that bad when you consider after you plague someone, their D-spec becomes like an 8.5 or a 9. I think Plague is 15% defense, so I think the main issue you're going to run into as Undead is trying to outgain Avians and Orcs and Tacticians. If everyone's able to use 4 gens against everyone else, that might be an issue. But I love Undead for their out of war power. When you have that O-spec based offense and free elites, you're just able to do so many learns. I'm a big old slut for learning people. And there's nothing more fun than your whole kingdom sitting down for a wave and yelling out Plague every time you plague. So I think Undead is perfectly good. I think Undead can compete with absolutely anything. I think Undead's mostly going to struggle against like elf clerics, sort of tankier styles, where you're not getting quite as many multi-taps and that Plague isn't coming into play. That's where you're going to struggle. But I really love Undead. Really high chance I'm playing a lot of Undead based on, well, I told Hex I would. See how much that matters, but I don't know. I love me some Undead. You're going to have lower net worth, sort of. Just having a 14 offense O-spec, it's so crazy. Because that's almost as good as anyone else's elites, but you don't have to train them. It means you have a lot of wizards from your pump. It means you have a lot of science from your pump. And in an age where there's maybe going to be weaker TMs, that's my guess, having a good WPA and science on your core means that you're not going to get fireballed that easily. Not getting fireballed that easily goes a long way. So, also, I don't particularly like hospitals. I think they're one of my least favorite war buildings, so it doesn't bother me that they can't have hospitals. Last age, I was gnomes. Gnomes didn't have hospitals. I had no problems with that. So, yeah, I think Undead, super fun, worth playing. Tell your friends. Artisan. The last age, I told everyone Artisan was the best core pick, and nobody believed me. And it was the best core pick. It just was. Everyone had bad offense, and gnomes rolled over everyone because they couldn't get broken. Artisans pushed a shitload of elites out early. They had the best offense. Last age, you should have picked Artisan. This age, it's not as good. All the core personalities have been buffed, all the TMs have been nerfed, and general economy is higher. So Tree of Gold's less valuable. I think the build time's nice. The nice little war buff lets you get your buildings built in time for your waves. This raise immunity is very strong as well. It's not immunity, but it makes it really hard to burn through watchtowers, and it makes it really hard to get through guard stations or raising. So this has always been low-key one of the strongest buffs that things randomly get. We saw it a lot of the race ages. It was on top of Dwarf. I picked various dwarves a couple times for specifically this buff. And building capacity. 30% building capacity is really scary. You know, it's saving you 8% land and war, which is okay. But if you find a way to use those homes effectively in war and out of war, that's when you start spiraling out of control. Because when you've got effectively 40% homes, suddenly your BE is basically maxed. You've got an extra like 16% population to throw into units, and you become a crazy sort of cow, tanky, whatever. Main issues, you don't have other things. You don't have other war builds. You don't really get other things. So I don't think Artisan's where it needs to be this age compared to last age. The exception is probably for like cows and micros. It's going to be very strong. Cleric. Used to be Paladin, now it's Cleric. It's worse. Like quite a bit worse than last age. There's maybe gonna be like immunity to plague is probably the best thing about this age's Cleric. If there's a lot of undead, which there's probably not even gonna be a lot of undead. But these bonuses were nice. This bonus was nice. So now you don't have cheap self spells. That's going to cost you a lot of mana, which is a lot of your value of a cleric in most situations, is how much mana you're giving to the rest of your kingdom. A lot of the other personalities got buffed in terms of their like main actual attacking bonuses. Meanwhile, we lost free watchtowers, we lost free and cheap draft, we lost mana, and we've just got the same minus casualties. So, you know, you get these books, and then your economy books, in the right situation, economy books are good, but they're not military books, they're not good for attacking. So this helps you pump elites, it helps you, when you're larger land, be more valuable to your kingdom. But if you watched my video, I go really in depth into clerics and what you want out of clerics. I'm going to release a cleric article or guide in the next couple days. Whenever I get around to finishing it, I can go over things there. But I think you really want an elf cleric and a dwarf cleric for Town Watch and Mist. I think you want 3 clerics or so just to get these spell covered, but I don't think you want a cleric core in general. I think everything else is strong. So, yeah, but it is. Got the ordering of these changed from last stage for some reason. So, yeah, heretics. You used to have those free runes. Now those free runes have been moved to Dark Elf. Instead, you have plus damage. Losing Rev on all TMs hurts TMs a lot. You're looking at probably running only 70% to 80% the books you had last age. Heretic lost called Mage's Fury, so no WPA buff at all. Get more wizards, but it's not a ton. And what these bonuses give you is basically 3.5 mana, 3.5 stealth. So in terms of like output, you're the same as the other TM personalities. Amnesia is going to be strong this age because of the books. Nightmares, but I feel like it's just weaker. This is a good bonus. This is a good bonus. Everyone likes having it. No, last age Heretic was the weakest TM, I think, outside of just, yeah, going all in on Nightmare like Emeriti. So I think relative to last age, it's maybe not as highly nerfed as Mystic and Rogue are. So in that way, maybe Heretic's okay. It's really tough to play one of these with no TPA or WPA buff, so you're probably going to want... I think this thing what you're going to see with TMs this next stage is a lot more defense, a lot less TPA and WPA. You're going to have to wait for a couple days of war for core to really start bleeding. And that's when you start capitalizing on your unbreakable TMs. You know, Heretic's fine. Not terrible. I don't know if I'm going to play them. But I don't usually play Heretics, so it doesn't mean a lot, I guess. Mystics. Mystics used to have rune production. Now they have less wizard loss. I think that's a buff. They don't have pitfalls anymore. They don't have rev. You know, the thing is that Mystics, they're essentially the same, and Mystics are always strong. The issue is they lost rev, and last age we had elves with +1 mana. And so Mystics are going to be worse just because there's no elf mystic anymore. But otherwise, you know, your Mystics look very similar as every other age. And you know, actually with this Arcane Science book production, I think you might actually manage similar amounts of arcane power. You're just going to have less economy and less military books. So, you know, I thought all the TMs seemed a bit nerfed, but actually Mystic looks pretty good. So I think run the same amount of Mystics you always would. I think hybrid Mystics are looking okay as well. Yeah, Mystics are nice. The biggest nerf is your Rogues. So, +2 Stealth Rogue was a mistake, and Invis. So, Rogue lost 25% of their stealth power, and they lost Invis, which was 20% TPA. Even if you're a fairy rogue, that's only 10% TPA now. So Rogue got pooped on. It's a lot less strong. The only saving grace is if you think the ET change is a nerf or not. So with all of the stronger core, you have TMs that are weaker. The balance is going to be quite a bit different. Still, though, rogues are the same as rogues have always been. You rob horses, and you strike people. And you need rogues to burn watchtowers. I don't know. Just, core seems so strong now that I'm not sure I like a lot of TMs as much. You know, it was really easy to run 10 or 11, 12 TMs, or even more plus hybrids last stage. Now I think you're going to be going to that more traditional 8 TM style that we used to see. I think that's what you want. Sage. Sage got buffed a lot, I think. I quite like Sage right now. Having Revelations and 25% more books everywhere is huge. I think I was doing some number crunching on books and Sage and stuff. I think about 2/3 into the age, a Sage is going to be as good as any core. And by the last week of the, last week of the age, I think Sages are going to be almost twice as strong as other personalities in terms of just their personality buff. So I think an end of age Sage is going to be able to run 30% more offense, whereas a warrior's only getting 15% more offense. That's what I mean. A tactician is, it's fast. But I think if you push just gain science on a Sage, you could have 30% more gain compared to 15% attack speed. That sort of thing. And of course, you can spread out your bonuses on Sage. I think an end of age Sage that pushes Arcane really strong is going to be able to have like 30% more TPA and WPA than other TM. I think they're going to push enough Cunning science that they're effectively a stronger Heretic. Main issue is, are they going to be able to get the raw wizards they need to make that work? Maybe. I think a Sage at the end of the age is going to be a stronger TPA than a Rogue and more Night Strike damage, but they don't have access to those special ops, right? So it's mostly what are you going to do for 4 or 5 weeks until they get online. But I think at the end of age, Sages are going to be, pretty dang strong. Am I going to run them? Probably not. I never end up running Sages. And when I do, they just end up getting Amnesia. So, but, yeah, if a top kingdom runs Sages and has a good first half of the age, they're just going to beat everyone at the age. So, keep that in mind, I guess. If you want to run just a couple Sages and make sure they're getting the best learn targets, not getting learned, it doesn't cost you a lot early age to lose out a little bit of power there, and then you can lean on them pretty hard at the end of age. I think that's pretty viable. I think you can run Sage on just about every personality or race as well. Though I would lean more into those Avians, Dwarf sort of Sage, where you want a lot of elites, and you've got other bonuses in. I don't think I'd run like a defensive elite Sage. I think an elf Sage could do alright. Is what it is. Maybe I'll run Sages just for fun. I don't think I want to run Undead Sages. Said I was going to run Undead, so who knows. Shepherd. Very weird pick. It did get nerfed from Revised. I think that was smart. So this bonus is pretty much as strong as Quick Feet or 15% offense or 30% minus casualties. So in that regard, you just have to see if everything else is as good as +1 general and espionage or extra kills and mercs. This is worth like 1% farms makes 60 bushels. So 100 of these, 300 bushels. This is worth 5% farms. 5% land is 5% land. This is worth 5% horses. Or stables, I mean. So you're basically getting reflect magic and 10% more build space. Is 10% build space and reflect magic as good as these two bonuses or these two bonuses or support casting? No, it's not so bad. The main thing is that the number one way you lose offense in war is being chained. And so if you can make yourself really, really hard to chain, suddenly stronger than other core at being a core. So I think Dwarf Shepherd looks really, really strong. Dwarf wants the food the most. Dwarf wants the free stables the most because BE doesn't affect stables. They've also got Mist, strong BE for guard stations. I don't want to ever have to hit a single Dwarf Shepherd. I'm going to dodge every Dwarf Shepherd I see, or I'm just going to bounce race them. I'm never going to trad in Dwarf Shepherd. Like, I'm not going to waste my time hitting 1,000-acre province for like 70 acres, right? But yeah, nah, screw Shepherd, screw Dwarf. I don't know if it's actually strong. I just know that I'm going to lose my shit trying to do stuff to them. So, Shepherd's probably strong if you can make it work for you. It doesn't have quite the oomph other things have, but it can see that it's got value. It's not the sort of value that makes an impact. So, yeah, that's Shepherd. Tactician. I think Tactician is the #1 personality of the age. Got 15% attack speed, and +1 general, and accurate intel. So you're saving thieves, which is going to be nice in a weaker TM age, and you can maintain your TPA. When it's a core versus core sort of age, +1 general is huge in a chain fight. Speed is huge in a chain fight. I don't see anything wrong with Tactician at all. Only issue you might have with Tactician is your ability to break TMs. And so you can either outsource that to some warriors or some orcs, or just rely on your biggest provinces having more offense and using them that way. I think Tactician's what we'll see the most of, and I think they won't be incorrect. War Hero, I think, is the dark horse pick. We've seen this minus honor loss in combat thing work really well in the past. I think if you run War Heroes correctly, if you're willing to withdraw from wars early to save honor, that you can end up with absurdly strong core. You're going to end up with all counts or higher on your War Hero. Let's just assume every War Hero's account. If that's happening, you're getting 6% offense, 3% more pop. But that's not really it, because the other core are all going to be barons. What you're really getting is 12% more offense, 6% more population. You stack those together, that's at least 20% more offense with, 15% more income and 30% better TPA and WPA. So now suddenly you can actually start fireballing core and getting more honor and having more output, and night striking core and getting more honor and more output. So now compared to last age, guard stations versus a general, I think I take the general every time. These two bonuses, they're not amazing. Did lose clear sight, but I think overall 1 general is almost good enough to be personality. You add that to an already established personality, you're just blowing it out the water. I didn't compare those before. Now, I ran War Hero this age. It was very strong. HI is an incredible spell, and now that's not a support spell, it's even more valuable. Training Grounds is really nice for pushing offense. Gains are really nice. So War Hero was really strong last age. I think it was the strongest personality last age. Other people didn't pick it, but they were wrong. So I had some count War Heroes last age. They got pretty scary, but they always lost the honor. That's the thing, is that they start off very strong. At the end of war, they're always lords and barons again. And then maybe some of your other war heroes have gone up to count for the next war. But with that honor retention, it's a lot more strong. And the reliability you're getting the honor means that even if you're getting less bonuses from the honor, you're assuming more honor. So it's not like, well, if my war hero gets count, it's going to be super strong. It's more like, I'm going to have count war heroes. They're not quite as additionally strong as they used to. Dragon Slay is nice, not that important. So I think war heroes improved the least from last age. But, you know, if it works, it's going to work really well. Am I going to just pick a bunch of war heroes and abuse the system like I'm screw-ups? Maybe. I might just do that and win, you know? Pick Undead war hero, and you can pump the most science and the most wizards of any core, stack that with the only other big multiplicative bonus in this honor thing, and just wreck people. Sounds pretty good to me. Slay dragons with 13.5 damage, O specs. Sounds good to me. Yeah. But it doesn't have any bonuses early age at all. That's the main issue. Is it's sort of like a sage in that you're relying on getting through the early age without any benefits and somehow turning that into a win. So I wouldn't recommend War Hero if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have a plan to get to count on half of your heroes. And those that do have a plan, they're going to get a lot higher in count. They're going to have Marquis and Dukes. And Warrior. Warrior didn't really get much better than last age. All it gained is extra kills. But when you've got Onslaught with kills, suddenly an Onslaught warrior is doing about 35% more kills than last age. That's a lot. I think in a core versus core age, offense isn't the be-all end-all compared to Tactician. However, if you stack kills and you hit their elites, either armies home or with ambushes or like bounce raises, even pre-war, you can really wreck their offense. Trades you get with your military on warrior are insane. It's also significantly better at learning people because it's just offense. Offense turns directly into book gains. Tactician doesn't really gain anything out of war. Tactician's the best in war. I think Warrior's the best out of war because you can learn people so strong and make sure pre-war you're hitting their TMs as hard as possible. You're guaranteeing TM hits in general. Maybe less value this age, maybe not. I love Warrior this age. I love Undead Warrior a lot. So, yeah. Overall, I like these changes. I want to see how the ET change affects things. I want to see an age with a lot less TMs. I don't think we're going to see kingdoms with no TMs or even 5 TMs. I think we're going to see kingdoms with 8 TMs instead of 12. And I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to how good you do in war being how good you chain people, not how many TMs you have just winning. Like last age, it really felt whoever had the most gnome rogues won every single war. Maybe that was just me, because I had the most gnome rogues other than 412, but 412 and Confessions of Lotus and Warbirds had all the wins last age. All the honor and all the war wins. And I mean, I gotta hand it to Confessions last stage. Picked like 12 gnome rogues, and it was clearly the best pick, so hats off to them for that. Is there a clear best pick this age? I don't know. I think all the core races are really viable. I think Halfling and Fairy are very viable TMs. I think you're losing out on Elf as a TM. I think if you're just looking for a easy to pump, pure D-spec DM, that Halfling's just better than Elf. And I really like the idea of these Dark Elves. If you have Dark Elf casters in any capacity, they're going to be super effective. It's just, are they going to be strong against other TMs? Maybe not. So, but I don't think you'll be disappointed with them. I mean, they're going to be using all their mana before everyone else because of the rune costs. Their spells are going to be more effective. They have plenty of defense to get the elites. I think everything's good. So, yeah, excited for next age. I'm going to make some videos on setups, I think, before the age starts, which is in 2 days, pretty soon. So, get your ideas together. And that's Smiles, checking out.